What's up, guys? Welcome to the Saturday show. Now, I know Mother 3 is in the title right now. Don't worry, it actually makes sense. One of the last comments from you guys at the end of the video is about Mother 3 and kind of an idea for it. It seems to make the most sense actually soon to release it, so we'll see. It'll be interesting. As always, guys, this is the Saturday show where we go back through and look at your comments based on the different topics that we talked about throughout the week in Newswave. And man, it was a busy week. There was a lot of stuff happening this week. I was actually looking through the notes for the Spawncast tonight, and it is just a ton of stuff to go over. It's going to be a fun podcast tonight, so you might want to tune in. As always, guys, enjoy these videos with the like button. It does help out. We're going to start today with a bit of a follow-up to the massive amounts of information and rumors that are slowly becoming very likely and very plausible. And that, of course, has to do with the Switch and Xbox games, because it does sound like we're going to be coming up to E3 and we're going to start hearing more and more about Xbox games that were originally console exclusives make their way to the Switch in some capacity. Ori seems to be number one. However, Jux Video, a French retailer, also named Cuphead. So Cuphead seems to be named as well. And they also named a bigger Xbox title, not like a smaller indie-esque kind of game like a Cuphead, for example, or Ori, games that aren't like, full price and they have their big budget games. They are kind of talking about one of Microsoft's like core franchises making the move to the Switch in some way, probably through streaming most likely. If it's something like, I don't know, Gears of War 4, Gears of War 5 or something, where they would use the xCloud. It could also be a racing game, but it could also be the one that everyone wants, Master Chief Collection. Of course, you could also just grab any of those Halo games and move it over, because of course a lot of those ran on the 360, so yeah, they would run on the Switch fine. Now, some of them, of course, have been touched up and remastered for the Xbox One. A lot of those games run at 60 frames per second now, but I'm sure they could get pretty much the same Halo 3 experience that we had on the 360 and get it on the Switch. Halo 1, Halo 2 even. You can just go back and grab all of those and move it over, and boom, you have a bunch of Halo games on the go. That would be an easy LAN party, man. I would have loved to have that back in the day when I was like biking up hills with this super heavy Xbox in my backpack. That would have killed to have a Switch that I could just carry around with Halo. So that would, I think, reinvigorate some LAN parties there, especially if you're out at like a convention and you got your Switch with you and everybody kind of gets their own Switches and plays some Halo. That would be awesome. Or split screen. 4-player split screen on the smaller, 6.3 inch screen. That'd be funny too. But just look out for that, because it seems like more and more evidence is piling up after Nate Direct-to-Feed Games put his video out. It's been like a floodgate that's opened. So keep an eye out for that and join us tonight on the Spawncast for a conversation around it, because it's going to be fun. And starting with Monday, we talked about a tease from Imran Khan that sent the internet into a frenzy. The tease centered on a game that would be revived by Nintendo after a very official cancellation. Later that day, a rumor was reported that Scalebound was the game Nintendo was reviving for the Switch. Odysseus says, thinking of canceled games, suddenly having a vision, Silent Hills Pachinko Machine Edition. Yeah, that was another one I saw floating around, was Silent Hills. That would have been pretty cool, because of course Konami, that was a massive cancellation there. However, that also had Kojima's name attached to it, and Kojima seems very, very busy on Death Stranding right now, and I don't think Konami would then all of a sudden go and revive that, although to have Silent Hill come back in some capacity would be really cool. But I think Nintendo, if they want to do something with that, they should look towards Eternal Darkness instead. I think that would actually be way better to have come back than Silent Hills right now, because again, I can't trust Konami to do anything. You're even throwing in pachinko machines there. I wouldn't doubt it if we got a Silent Hill announcement and then followed by the words, it's a pachinko machine, because, gambling is making them a lot of money and everything. So yeah, it's a shame. Silent Hills would have been cool. Or even if we got like a remaster of the Silent Hill games put on the Switch, like the collection they did, just not as bad, I guess, from the 360 version and the PS3 version. And the thing that I really want, if they're going to remaster anything, get these Metal Gear Solid games on the Switch. Even if it's like 1, 2, and like Peace Walker, move those over. I mean, seriously, you can get a much better experience instead of the Vita. You can get it on the Switch. That's what they absolutely need to do. I know not everyone would buy into it because a lot of us have already played it, but like, why not? That's like easy money, and I'd like to see Konami do that. Tuesday, we saw some odd-looking prototype Pokemon sprites from Red and Green before they were released in Japan. We also saw Sony announce that the Vita will have its production officially halted in Japan, which was the last place the system was being sold. Vice says, I remember before the Vita came out, Sony fans were talking about how the Vita was going to destroy the 3DS. That didn't happen. Well, it really didn't happen because Nintendo was very quick to respond to when the 3DS came out. It was priced too high. It was $250. It was basically the same price as the Vita, essentially, and the Vita was a much more capable machine. And of course, if you have more expensive devices, it's harder to sell. So cutting the 3DS, which was a massive price cut, by the way, from $250 to $170, was a big way to kind of get things off and running. And then, of course, we saw what happened with all of their IPs hitting that platform. Pokemon, of course, the biggest thing that pushed it along was that, but then they added a lot of other stuff. We got Zelda's on there. We got, of course, Mario games, Kid Icarus, Donkey Kong. The list goes on. There's a lot of games hit the 3DS. Third parties jumped on, and then it was off and running. The Vita had a ton of its own issues, though, with, of course, its memory cards were so expensive. They were so expensive. They had just gone like micro SD card. It probably would have been a lot easier because some people were spending like half the system's value on like a 64 gigabyte memory card. It was crazy because some of the games you download would take up gigabytes of space, and you're like, well, man, I'm not getting much for my money with these memory cards. That was a whole situation on its own. And then, of course, Sony just didn't have the IPs to compete with Nintendo at a handheld level when they're also trying to push along their PlayStation 4, where a majority of their IPs went and their development focus was. So it was a whole situation there, but you gotta admit, out of the gate, the 3DS at $250 versus what was like the Vita at about $250, yeah, a lot of people, yeah, I see why people lean towards the Vita. It was a system that brought console-level games like Uncharted, for example, to the handheld, so it was a pretty compelling system. Wednesday, we talked about Google sending invites to gaming outlets to check out their presentation at GDC in March. Speculation has been going around for a while that Google would be entering the video game market with streaming and possibly a standalone game console. Overhype says, I'll pass on anything Google has to offer, as if they don't have their tentacles and everything else as it is. That's actually one of the reasons that a lot of people are assuming that Google would want to get into gaming in some capacity. Streaming, a home console, they want to keep expanding their market and keep reaching new people. And hey, gaming is making a lot of money right now. Microsoft keeps posting these massive numbers that they're making in terms of revenue. Sony, of course, is pretty much surviving with their PlayStation 4 and like their cameras and their sensors and everything. So, and their insurance company actually in Japan. But it's definitely gaming is keeping them alive. Nintendo, of course, is based solely on games for the most part, and their IPs that they're now moving to things like theme parks and everything and movies. So I guess Google's like, yeah, let's get in there and let's do that. And of course, they have their hand in a lot of our stuff already, whether it's your phone or your internet browser or search engine, data storage online, cloud storage, servers. They're locked in pretty well to our lives already. And that's why I think a lot of people are looking at this possibility of a game system, and they do see some potential there because, of course, they can intertwine it with all of their current services to maybe help you find games, or maybe make it so that if you're watching a stream, it can suggest that game to you and you can buy it easily on your console. You buy it on your Android phone and then your console starts downloading it. There's a lot of possibilities there, and I'd be curious to see what they can do with it. But I understand people, of course, don't like how active Google is at times in their lives, but I mean, a lot of us are using Google's services whether we like it or not, because it is pretty much integrated with our lives at this point. I would just like to see what they can do from a competitive standpoint, right, against Microsoft, Sony, Nintendo, because of course Microsoft's moving towards services. Well, Google is like, they're all services at this point, so we'll see what they can come up with. And of course, if they want to compete in the gaming space, they have to show up with games that make sense, are compelling, and are relevant. So they would have to spend some money, which means they'd have to give us hopefully good games. So that's at least something to look forward to there. Let's at least see what Google has before we write them off. Thursday, we saw the NPD sales released for the month of January that shows the Switch taking the top spot, along with Kingdom Hearts 3 topping the charts for games. It seems the Switch is off to a fast start in 2019, and with the back half of the year set up with releases, it's quickly shaping up to be the year of the Switch. Steven says, I still say why show sales for consoles in Japan only? I would say 95% plus of your audience is in the United States and Europe. Why not show numbers from those only, or show worldwide sales? Those are the only numbers that are relevant to your audience, and don't tell me that there is no way to track worldwide sales on a weekly basis, because I don't believe it. Well, Steven, that's actually the case. The only way to really come up with weekly numbers is out of Japan. They release them straight up. We see Media Create, we see Famitsu, they just release them. The MPD and in Europe and everything, they actually will hold those numbers and give them to partners in marketing, and basically they analyze the different numbers from retail. And it's not just video games. The MPD does all kinds of stuff, and their job is to help predict the future and the market trends to help their partners around them, whether it's retail or investors, kind of make a determination as to what's going on in the future. So they make a lot of money by selling those numbers and that information. They do give us some stuff, but it's monthly, of course. The UK sales charts are weekly, but those numbers are generally hidden because they sell them, essentially. So unfortunately for us, there's no real way to see them outside of rankings, which we get the UK sales charts, and the MPDs, we get that monthly, we get the UK weekly. And just information they'll give us year-on-year growth, for example. And then sometimes the numbers do leak out, and we do see that occasionally to give us an idea. And then we'll, of course, see Nintendo tell us every few months in their quarterly reports, hey, this is how we're doing, this is how many we've sold. Nintendo's very transparent about what they've sold, whether it's good or bad. The Wii U, they still told people numbers. You can go back and look at it now. But that's the only way we can tell. It's a whole situation there, and that's why it's kind of tough to follow these things at times, but we do our best. Killer Goalie says, interesting theory that the Switch is going to sell massively in 2019 based on 2 games released in 2018, combined with Nintendo lowering its 2018 fiscal estimate from that 20 million to 17 million, and many suspect it's going to hit 15 to 16. It'll be interesting to see what comes out for it in 2019, combined with possible PS5, Xbox 2 announcements. So the word is we're going to see Xbox next generation systems at least at E3, and I have a theory that Sony will either try to at least announce it ahead of them, so maybe in like April or May. We were actually due for one technically if you go back to when the PS4 was announced, or at least talked about somewhat. They actually did that in February, so we've actually almost passed the month that we kind of were hoping they might give us a little tease about the PS5. However, they're probably not releasing it this year. It's probably next year, so hey, maybe they'll tell us about the PS5 next year early on and then release it at the end of the month, or at the end of the year. But no, the Switch is actually the only system currently, if you look at MPDs, for example, where they're being predicted to actually grow year over year, and they have so far pretty heavily in the early parts of this year, in January and then through February. It's actually growing pretty high in Japan and the MPDs. In fact, they're probably going to be the only ones that actually have that kind of that incline on the charts going up. And of course, we have a lot of games coming up, including Animal Crossing. You can't sleep on Animal Crossing. Animal Crossing is a big series for sales. It sells very well on like the 3DS, for example, and the DS, over 10 million copies, no sweat. So I do think Animal Crossing is going to push heavily, and I do think Zelda Link's Awakening will push heavily. And then you can't also forget about Pokemon. Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. Massive amounts of division between the fan base. Everyone's looking for Gen 8. So if Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee sold 10 million copies in a couple months, what do you think Gen 8 is going to sell with way more Switches at Christmas time? Yeah, I think they're going to do pretty well this year. That's just a hunch. Finally, on Friday, we went over the announcement that Reggie Fils-Aimé would be stepping down as president of Nintendo of America and would be replaced by Doug Bowser. This was a surprising announcement and shocked everyone that day. However, it sounds like Reggie is ready to move on to retirement and spend time with his family and friends. Being able to retire at a younger age of 57 and in good health and on good terms is a good way to go out. Marcus Kramer says, Reggie will announce Mother 3 out now in the eShop on April 15th. His final gift to all his fans before retiring. Only the Reginator is able to do that. And you know what? I thought about this and I said, yeah, that's what they should do. Seriously, Reggie has spent his entire, most of his career talking about Mother 3. And he gets asked every E3 about it. He's talked about it at length several times about him wanting to bring it over, and he's kind of remarked that we hear the fans, we hear you, we hear you. Well, you know what? This is the time to do it. And I know there are issues and there are some cultural differences and everything, but you know what? Who cares? Release it. That's the way I see it at this point. You know what? Put it out there. If you have to, slap a teen rating on it. That's fine. At this point, no matter what you release, people are going to get mad or complain about something. So, you know what? Put it out there. The fans, I think, would like to see that. And it'll be really, really cool for Reggie to be able to show up in just a pre-made video. You put it on YouTube or you put it on Twitter like we've seen, right? We just saw that. And he says, you know what? Mother 3 is out. You can pick it up. It's been localized. Now leave me alone, I'm gonna go retire. Ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Saturday's show. If you guys enjoyed this video, hit the like button, really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about today, whether it's been the week of ridiculousness with scale. We just talked about Scalebound, and we talked about Xbox games on the Switch, the MPD numbers, with Kingdom Hearts topping the charts along with the Switch, and it's been all over the place this week. After a slower week, it's been ridiculous amounts of information. So let me know what you guys think about all this stuff down below. I'm very curious. Make sure you stop by later on tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. We're going to do the Spawncast and have a lot of fun there. So I'll see you guys then.